birds can fly over or find your yard anywhere. Even the smallest patch of native vegetation can be really attractive.
Hello everyone and welcome to Nature with Gabe, the channel that connects you to nature and incredible people like my friend Dr. Richard Hall. Richard's going to be telling us a little bit about how he has managed to attract 137 species of birds, including 30 warblers, into his yard. A tiny little yard that's, I think, less than half an acre, something like that. Really small yard in a really urban area here in Georgia.
So I've been recording birds in the yard since I moved into this house 10 years ago today, and bit by bit I've been building the number of birds I've seen, and I think I'm now at 137 species. Planting primarily native plants is a really great way of attracting birds, because these plants have co-evolved with a lot of bugs that have evolved to eat them, and the birds know the timing of when these bugs are hatching, and they kind of time their migrations in the spring and the fall to cash in on this. In the fall, additionally, native shrubs such as beauty berries that produce a lot of berries are really great plants to put in the yard. So Swainson's thrush and rose-breasted grosbeak have been feeding their fill on those plants. If you don't know much about native plants and you want to get started in creating a native habitat in your yard, first of all, go to National Audubon's Plants for Birds website, where it actually tells you what species can be found locally. Before moving here, I'd never actually owned a house or a yard, so I was a complete novice at gardening. And so my biggest piece of advice to you starting out for the first time would be to start small. Just convert your yard like one bed at a time. You might want to start with removing parts of your lawn. Lawns generally take up a lot of water and don't provide as much food for migratory birds. So even though my primary motivation in bringing all these native plants into the yard was to attract birds, it's been really exciting over the years to see what other wildlife has been attracted. So often green anoles will be hunting in this flower bed here, and they love to use even this vegetation that's already died back. They love to hide out in the seed heads there to hunt insects. And then many of the plants that I've planted are caterpillar food plant for iconic species like the monarch butterfly. My swamp milkweeds were full of caterpillars this year. And then passion flowers have lovely spiky Gulf fritillary caterpillars on them. And the diversity of bees, moths, butterflies and other pollinators I've seen has really kind of blown me away.
A yard that's great for birds is not going to look like your stereotypical yard that has a big lawn and really well-maintained bushes and shrubs. It's going to look wild, and this is actually really important. This is what makes birds comfortable. It gives them places to hide and forage, and some people might be a little bit put off by this. However, there are ways you can get creative in creating borders and outlines with rocks and logs to try and have a little bit more of a structured look to the wild space. That is really going to be good for birds. Another thing that you can do is get your property certified. Here in Georgia, there's the Georgia Audubon Wildlife Sanctuary program, and it's a great way to not only recognize your yard, but allow your neighbors and people in the community to see that your space is important. And it's not just this wild, unkept yard, but it's a place that is purposeful, and it is providing a valuable place for not only birds, but so many other wildlife that are in the area.
So on top of adding native plants to your yards for sources of food and nesting sites for birds, another way you can attract birds to your yard is by providing different kinds of food. And that can be a really great way to get some up-close views of common birds and learn to identify them. Providing different kinds of food will attract different kinds of birds. So a nectar feeder here will attract hummingbirds, and sometimes even nectar feeding birds like orioles. And these suet feeders, you can even feed warblers, because suet attracts insect-eating birds, including woodpeckers, nuthatches, pine warblers, orange crown warblers that winter here. So having feeders placed in a spot where you can easily see them is a great way to start identifying birds. But also remember that there's a whole community of birders in your area that you can reach out to. So if you have a local Audubon chapter, they can provide resources to help you get started, and they even offer walks where you can go along with people who really know their stuff who can help you identify more species, and it's pretty addictive. I put this water feature in 2012, and one of the goals of doing that was I've got these really big trees in the yard, and oftentimes I'd be glimpsing up into the oak leaves and see these little silhouetted figures darting around above me, and I was pretty sure they were warblers. But if you can't get up into the trees to be at eye level with the warblers, the other thing you can do is bring them down to your level, because they all need to bathe and drink. Some of these birds that spend their lives in the treetop, they need to kind of feel safe making their way down to the water's edge. So situating it close to a place where there's cover so they can dart back into if they see a predator. The other important thing is that the water's actually shallow enough for them to bathe in. So if you have a pond, you want to have a shallow edge, or you can have a pump that circulates water down a shallow stream like we've got here. And the other thing about the moving water is I think that the noise and the dappled light of the pond helps attract the birds and for them to find that water body. I've been really surprised by the diversity of species that we've seen, ranging from really tiny birds like a winter wren yesterday and a ruby-crowned kinglet, up to birds like red-shouldered hawk coming in to bathe, and once even a great blue heron came in to hunt for frogs. One of the great surprises of putting in the pond was the diversity of warblers that have been attracted. And being in town, we're accustomed to seeing species like yellow-rump warblers that spend the winter here and move around the yard in flocks. But during migration, some species you really wouldn't expect to be in the middle of a very urban habitat, including shy species like Kentucky warbler, have actually come out to drink in the pond. And occasionally we see these really big mixed species flocks in October, which is always really exciting. The first time I saw, I think, 5 bay-breasted warblers together here at the pond, that was the most I'd ever seen anywhere at one time.
Now, you might not have the resources to put in a water feature as big as this, or you might have the resources to put in something way larger. No matter the size of the water feature, it's going to be beneficial. Even if it's just a tiny little feature that has moving water, it's going to make a big impact and get a lot more birds coming into your space. Another great thing you can do to attract birds and other wildlife to your yard is leave leaf litter where it's meant to be, on the ground. Also, leave things like pieces of dead bark and wood on the ground as well. This is going to provide places for insects that are extremely beneficial to birds to overwinter and to hide, and birds are going to come through here and you'll see them lifting up the leaves looking for insects underneath there. It also provides places for fungi to grow, which are really important for maintaining soil health, and they help trees and other plants survive. And so leaving leaf litter and dead wood on the ground anywhere you can is going to be really beneficial. If you rake up part of the leaves on your lawn, you can put them in an area, out back or somewhere where they can stay undisturbed, and that's going to be very beneficial for birds.
So one of the things I've learned along this journey is I've learned a lot more about birds, and I've become a better birder by paying more close attention to what comes into my backyard. And there are many resources to help you, from online guides that you can download in your smartphone to citizen science websites like eBird, where you can record your data in national databases. So there's a few ways that I've tried to grow the total number of birds seen in my yard list. One thing I would do is look at eBirds to see the timing of when birds are moving through my area. And if I'm looking for particular insect-eating species, I might kind of look up into the oaks when there's lots of caterpillars. If I'm looking for thrushes and tanagers in the fall, I'll be checking Virginia creeper, beautyberry, any pokeweed, anything that has berries. So one of my fun activities is I have a neighbor just 500 meters away who's also a birder, and sometimes he has called me up when he's seen a bird like a migrating broadwing hawk or an osprey fly over his house. And last time he did that, I ran outside. I didn't see his osprey in spite of a long time trying, but about 30 minutes later, an adult bald eagle flew over. And that's really cool because I live right here in the middle of town, not close to a river, not particularly surrounded by attractive habitat. But these birds can fly over or find your yard anywhere. Even the smallest patch of native vegetation can be really attractive.
One last thing that I'd like to highlight is that by building a place that's beneficial for birds, you're also building a place that's beneficial for all kinds of wildlife. And so Richard has told me stories of him seeing salamanders in his pond. He's had so many different insects visiting his plants. He has chipmunks running all over the place and all sorts of interesting things happening in this space. And so by building a place that's good for birds, you're building a place that's great for wildlife. Using native plants and leaving leaf litter on the ground, all these things can make a really big difference in supporting wildlife. And it gives you the opportunity to learn so much more about natural world around you. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and go ahead and like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions, and check out the resources I have down in the description below. Thank you to Richard for allowing me to use your space and film, and remember, nature is powerful, and so are you. Have a great day.